This day will long be remembered by our company as one of the darkest since our organization. Early this morning, we were placed in position about 1 mile west of the courthouse, and our support was Daniel's brigade, Rhodes's division, whilst Doyle's brigade of the same division was posted immediately on our right, and Ramseur's on our left. With such meager opportunities, it is impossible for the writer to give an accurate idea of the entire battle, and 'tis our purpose to give a truthful, though but simple statement of the part played by our company in this bloody drama. As far as I was able to learn, the left of our line extended to the River Po. The right swung around towards and beyond the courthouse. Our position for artillery was anything but a good one. Immediately in our front and 300 yards from our line of works was a body of piney woods in which the enemy's sharpshooters were posted, and from which they poured a continuous stream of Minnie balls. On our left, a body of oak woods ran at an obtuse angle from those piney woods towards our works, whilst on our right another body of oak woods ran at right angles towards us. Thus our battery commanded an open field of about 300 yards in length, and not more than 150 yards in width. In our immediate front, General Daniels had no sharpshooters posted, but on our left he had quite a strong body. These suffered severely from the enemy's sharpshooters, accounting almost to a regular line of battle. I do not think General Doles had any sharpshooters in his front, or if he had, they were so near our own breastworks as not to render any service in watching the movements of the enemy. Our 4 guns were posted in the following manner: the 2 3-inch rifle guns being on the right and the 2 Napoleons on the left, numbering from the right the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th detachments, my detachment being the 4th. The 2nd Howitzers were in position on our left, some 250 yards. No other company belonging to our battalion was engaged. About 9 a.m., we were ordered to open upon the enemy in our front, and our battery succeeded, after a few well-directed shots, in driving them back, or at least in keeping them quiet. This was only a heavy skirmish line of the Federals, but they remained quiet only a short time, and then they poured the Minnie balls into us with a hearty goodwill. Then they opened on us with their artillery, and though it was impossible for them to see us from their batteries, yet they struck inside of our battery every shot. After firing some 50 or 60 rounds, we ceased firing, but now and then would put in a feeler by way of generous reminder. Their sharpshooters, being so close to us, annoyed us no little. Later in the afternoon, they concentrated their artillery upon us and dealt the death missiles with an unsparing hand. Literally, the earth quaked and trembled beneath the shock, but we were ordered not to reply to their artillery, and we waited for their infantry. Having no especial cause to stand up in the open field, most of us took our seats behind the breastworks, and many of us went to sleep. On our left, some heavy fighting was going on, and the news passed down the line that we had driven the enemy several miles. Loudly roared the brazen-mouthed cannon, chanting their deep-bass notes of death, in solemn harmony with the terrible notes of the fatal Minnie musket. The enemy's cannon cease for a moment. A death-like stillness hangs over the line. 'Tis the pause of death. The angel Azrael for a moment droops his blood-reeking wings and rests on the field of battle. Make ready, boys. They are charging. Every man sprang to his post, and the enemy comes swooping through the woods on our right, in the front of Doyle's brigade. We pour a few rounds of canister into their ranks when we are ordered to. Cease firing. Our men are charging. A long line of Confederate infantry is seen rapidly advancing toward the enemy's line, and we jump upon the breastworks, loudly cheering them in their supposed charge. But, good heavens, something is wrong. Those Confederates have no muskets. And though 'tis hard to believe, yet a second glance sufficed to show us that they had surrendered without firing a shot, and were going to the Yankee rear as fast as their cowardly legs would carry them. Between that line of Confederates and our battery is one dense mass of Federal infantry, advancing rapidly, and at a trail arms. They were but a short distance from us, but so far to our right that we could not fire into them without killing our own men. Again we sprang to our guns and put in a shot anyway, and anywhere we could, but no artillerist could stem the torrent now, nor wipe away the foul stain upon their fair banner of Confederate valor. The 4th Detachment fights its gun until the first gun is captured. The second gun is captured, and the third gun is captured, and its own limber chest, with its number 6, Dr. Roberts, captured. Nearly every man in the detachment a recruit. Gentlemen recruits, I doff my hat to you. Our support was breaking on all sides. On our right and rear, the enemy were pouring in upon us in a perfect avalanche. And now comes over us a feeling of sickening horror. Not the fear of death, for so help us God, we thought not of dying, but we thought of the shame in leaving our battery to be captured by the enemy, and that, too, almost without a struggle. Lieutenant Payne, who was standing near the 4th gun, now asked Major Watson, "What must be done?" I heard Major Watson make no reply, but his countenance was more expressive of dejection, not of fear, for he was the very bravest of men. Then Major Watson, Lieutenant Reed, our adjutant, Lieutenant Payne, and myself, together with most of the 4th Detachment, sprang over the breastworks towards the enemy's main line, and moving obliquely to the left, re-entered our lines somewhat near the 2nd Howitzers. Everything was in the direst confusion. All company organization was entirely broken up. Our men, being ordered to take care of themselves, got out of the enemy's way as best they could, scarcely any 2 of them going together. Consequently, I'm unable to keep an account of their movements. The reader will therefore excuse the seeming egotism if I record my own adventures for the balance of the day. Time, about 5 p.m. When Major Watson left, I concluded it was time for me to be moving. So I sprang over the breastworks also, and as I did so, I hung my foot in a root or twig and came down upon the ground with a heavy thwack. Then I heard one of my bosom friends say, "There goes poor Buck." But he did not stop to see whether I had gone or not, and I reckon I would have done as much for him. However, I gallantly picked myself up and made very good time. I thought I was wounded, too. Then, going some 50 yards to the left, I re-entered our lines. In rear of the 3rd Company was a line of hastily constructed earthworks, occupied by 5 companies of North Carolina infantry, belonging to Daniel's brigade, who had been moved from the main line in the morning, we taking their place, and I thought this small body of men would be a nucleus on which we would rally our broken line. So taking an Enfield rifle, cartridge boxes, etc., from a demoralized infantryman, I made for that line as soon as possible, and there found General Ewell, with several staff officers endeavoring to rally our men. Several of our boys fall in with these 5 companies, and Ewell orders a charge. 5 companies to charge as many thousand Yankees. But we do it. We advance with a yell, and even reach our caissons, but the enemy are too strong for us, and we are literally wiped out. It looked to me as if not so many as a dozen got back. The enemy had not formed a regular line of battle, but seemed to me to be in as much confusion as we were. Private J.M. Forquerian of our company is wounded in this charge. Gallant Dick Ewell remains at his post and is manfully endeavoring to bring up the stragglers. It is getting about twilight. By Ewell's side, astraddle of a little pony, is a boy soldier of not over 11 or 12 years of age, and I may live to be 100 years of age, but I will never forget that little boy, his pony rearing up and pawing in the direction of the enemy, and the gallant little soldier firing his tiny pocket pistol as earnestly as Murat heading a charge. We reform again, and by this time a brigade, marching by the right flank, come sweeping down the lines. By the left flank comes from some old veteran that swings them into line of battle, and we knew something had to give way. "Charge, men! General Lee is looking on." With a yell and a dash, we made another attempt. This time the Yankees had formed their line, and we get into the closest quarters it ever was, before or since, my fortune to witness. At one time, the lines of battle were not over 20 yards apart. The color-bearer falls, Private W.E. Good of our company, bears them onward. This time we are more successful, and we rush undismayed on the Yankee forces, the fire flashing from their muskets lighted with a bright red glow, the faces of our men charging, and upon each man's countenance is seen the determination to win back those guns or else lose his life in the attempt. In the twilight's soft gloaming is seen the form of man against man, engaged in fearful death struggling. The yell of determination is heard far above the crash of musketry, whilst ever and anon the discordant note of some wailing victim grates harshly upon the ear as the death ball crashes through the bone. It is my opinion that it takes better, braver, and cooler man to stand by this his peace during an engagement than it does to charge any line of battle ever formed, and for this reason an artillerist has no excitement in his fighting, and frequently is standing up entirely unprotected, apparently doing nothing, simply holding his thumb upon the cannon vent. But if he takes his thumb off that vent a moment too soon, he kills the man in front of him. In an infantry charge, every man feels the individuality of his efficiency, and all fear being subservient to the animal magnetism of excitement. He in reality knows no fear. In the charge, I noticed a Federal major endeavoring to make his men follow him. He was but a few paces off from me. I fired, he fell, and he was so close to me that I got his hat before he fell to the ground. I stopped to load my rifle. A greasy-looking North Carolinian stepped out of the ranks, turned him over, took out of his pockets his watch, money, etc., and went on in the charge. On we pressed until the enemy was driven from our battery, and once more the Confederate flag was floating over the 3rd Company Richmond Howitzers. From every gun our men had carried off the implements, and that is the reason they had not been turned upon us. The enemy still hold a portion of our lines, especially a traverse some 40 or 50 yards on our right. It becomes a difficult matter to dislodge them, nor can we do it without reinforcement. For this traverse they sweep our lines with a terrible, enfilading fire. Who can describe our feelings when we regained our guns? Loud cheers rent the air, and each man seemed endowed with a tenfold strength. Quickly the canister is rammed home, and our Napoleon does its work. Being nearest to our 3rd gun, I commenced working that, acting as gunner. Colonel Hardaway was at the gun when I reached it, but soon afterwards took several men and commenced working our 2nd gun. Colonel Hardaway was amongst the first to reach our battery, and behaved with the greatest bravery. After firing about 30 rounds from the 3rd gun, our friction primers gave out, and running over to the 4th gun for a fresh supply, there I found Major Watson, Adjutant Reed, and 2 or 3 members of the 2nd Howitzers, endeavoring to work it, and then I took the gunner's place there. The gun being very heavy, and all of us well nigh broken down, we made an infantryman leave his shelter behind a big tree and assist us at the trail in rolling the gun up to its proper position after the recoil from firing. One of our boys, Peter Porter, was assisting me at the trail also. A volley from the traverse passed over us, and Porter, Major Watson, and the infantrymen fell. The first severely wounded in the arm, the second mortally, and the third killed dead. This pretty well disabled the gun, for those of us left were so nearly exhausted that we could scarcely stand up. I tied Porter's arm up the best I knew how and started him off to the rear. Then, at our major's request, we procured a litter and bore him from the field, returning instantly to our guns. It was now 10 o'clock at night, and the fighting was well nigh over. The enemy had been driven from our lines entirely, for Allegheny Johnston's men had come down the lines and pushed them out. The enemy was still in force 300 yards in our front. And now comes the saddest part of the bloody drama. The excitement and danger is over, and we are seeking the loved and the lost. When the Yankees first captured our company, most of our boys struck out for the Rockbridge Artillery, some distance down the line. They will turn up tomorrow, all right, but our actual losses are far heavier than they have ever been since we have been in the Army.